Uh, Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Your friendly voice from the International Anti-Corruption Academy, Vienna. And now today there will be an election special whereby I will discuss an article, a periodical by Professor Susan Rose Ackerman entitled Greed, Culture and the State. Finally, the state represents the general elections as in most developing and underdeveloped nations. Okay? Before that, as I said, I'm an anti-corruption specialist, I'm a compliance specialist as conferred by the International Anti-Corruption Academy, funded by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. My 2 years master's program has entitled me to be certified as an anti-corruption and compliance specialist. Okay? Before I proceed, I like to wish all Malaysians Salam Malaysia Madani and also Salam Reformasi. And now I'll read the transcript of my master's degree in anti-corruption studies from IACA, UNODC. This is the degree conferred to me, okay, and among the topics which has been lectured, which has been shared knowledge with the lecturers of the esteemed university that is more of an institution on topics including 7 topics, ladies and gentlemen. I'll read them to you. This is my master's degree, year 2013, and this is 2014. 2 years, ladies and gentlemen. And the topics covered are introduction and consideration of crime, including corruption, psychology of corrupt behavior, ethical aspects of and cultural dimensions, sociological including criminal approaches and discourse, introduction and conceptual considerations. That's module 1. Module 2 is quantitative and qualitative research methods and their application, including measuring anti-corruption, microeconomic theories and models of corruption, macroeconomic theories and models of corruption, economic consequences and effects of corruption, and policy-related measures. Okay, on this note, I'm more of a qualitative researcher and developer. I rather interview people rather than analyzing data, analyzing all the various sources of information. My research on my undergraduate was also qualitative. My postgraduate research is also qualitative methods. Okay. The third module is on political science theories on corruption, political corruption, corruption in the public sector and security, quantitative and qualitative research methods and the application, including measuring anti-corruption, corruption and development, and the fourth module is risk assessment to fight corruption, compliance systems and strategies, corruption in the private sector, good corporate governance. And the fifth module is rule of law and anti-corruption. Very interesting indeed, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be covering it later on. And according to one of the lecturers, who is a sub-editor with the U.S. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, USFCPA, Andy Brady Spalding, he has this to say about the rule of law. It can be contested, it can be challenged, it can be controversial, as long as it is also can be circumvented. Four aspects of the rule of law. You agree with me, it's immaterial. I have to say what Professor Andy Brady Spalding has to say of rule of law and anti-corruption. Okay, the other topics, national anti-corruption laws and in a comparative perspective, including the method of comparative law, international legal instruments against corruption. Example, UNCAC, United Nations Convention Against Corruption, whereby Malaysia is also a signatory. I'll be discussing on this as well. Human rights and anti-corruption, and the module 6, anti-corruption enforcement with a focus on the public sector, compliance systems with a focus on the private sector, role of civil society, the media in an investigative journalism in anti-corruption, collective action and international cooperation. This module was done in Malaysia. 30 hours came down to Malaysia to study this module in collaboration with the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Academy. Okay? Since we are the enforcement agency, the United Nations and IACA gave us the honor to host this anti-corruption enforcement. The last module is prevention and compliance systems, implementation and development, public sector, prevention and corruption systems, prevention and compliance systems, implementation and development, private sector, education and awareness, raising these issues, anti-corruption agenda, the future. Okay. And the title of my thesis, which I got 82, considered and classified as good by Professor Tina Soraide from the University of Bergen, Norway, together with 3 external examiners. I got 82, considered very good. So it's considered good. If above 90, it's known as excellent. Gender factor in bribery practices. Why are women public officials less prone to engage in bribery compared to their male counterparts in the Malaysian public service? I will be discussing this later in my series of talks. Okay, my method of studying, collecting data, analyzing data, developing and researching on the data is all qualitative. I interviewed about 150 respondents from all sectors: public sector, business sector, civil society, including NGOs and other interested stakeholders. Okay. Before I continue, I'd like to remind you guys that this might be a boring session because it's more intellectual, it is more inclined, it is more appealing, I guess. Or I think academicians tend to have more what do you call it, indulgence in this session, as well as undergraduates, the scholarly society, and whoever is involved in the combat of corruption, both in the public sector, private sector, that is the business sector, and also civil society. okay, including NGOs, as I've said, and all respective stakeholders. First of all, let me be very clear that we have to agree to disagree. And secondly, I am not affiliated to any political parties. I'm not aligned to any of these political parties. I'm taking this initiative on a voluntary basis because of my respect for PMX and its cabinet, political parties such as PKR, DAP, as well as Amanah and APCO. Although I'm not a member of any of these parties, and this talk is not about politics, although I am qualified, certified to talk about corruption in politics as prescribed in my transcript. Okay? So let's agree to disagree. If you don't agree with me, or in other words, you disagree with me, well, I will kindly ask you to debate it, argue it out with the United Nations. Okay? And I'm sure all the so-called Zilwangs and the morons and idiots, brainless creatures, won't agree with me. Okay? But anyway, this is an intellectual discourse. It's a scholarly discussion as well as an academic session whereby I'll discuss various articles, various journals, various periodicals, including articles from the United States Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which is published in the India Journal. Okay. The session today, webinar, is an election special. It's an article written by one of my gurus, one of my esteemed, prestigious lecturers who is well known within the anti-corruption circle, within the anti-corruption arena, by the name of Susan Rose Ackerman. Title of the periodical, the article is Greed, Culture and the State. Okay, in reference to corruption. Okay, what she has to say, although this is totally academic, which I can understand and which I can listen and which I can adhere to, but I'll have to give you guys examples so that you too can follow my discussion on man-to-man basis, on human society, human rights, on a simple and straightforward, short and sharp language. Okay, what is greed? Let me bring you an article in the United States Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which involves a Malaysian businessman by the name of Leonard Glenn Francis, or in other words, Fat Leonard. One of the articles published by the US FCPA is Fat Leonard's Harem. Okay? Fat Leonard's bevy of beautiful girls, liquor, wine, and gambling. Women wine song, that's a basic mantra for any person to be caught in bribery, besides money, of course. In the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission Act, the word bribe doesn't appear, ladies and gentlemen. Instead of bribe, the term which often appears is gratification, and the word bribe never appears in the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Act 2018. Okay, going back to Fat Leonard. Who is actually Fat Leonard? What did he do? Why did he do? How did he do it? Okay, the 4 W's and the 1 how, H, husband. 4 wives and 1 husband. Okay, Fat Leonard has a company based in Singapore. He married a Filipino, but he is a Malaysian resident, he is a Malaysian citizen who resides in Port Dickson. Okay, Fat Leonard got extensive, unscrupulous, greedy contracts from the US 7th Fleet, or in other words, US Pacific Fleet, which is the biggest US fleet in the world. Okay, what did Fat Leonard do? He bribed the Navy admirals, the Navy captains, and so forth and so on, who were even involved in Operation Desert Storm, who were involved in the Operation Desert Thunder. But being human, they also are susceptible to corruption. They also got their weakness: 1 woman, 2 wine, 3 song. Okay? In this particular case of Fat Leonard, whenever these naval ships come to Malaysian shores, Singapore shores, Philippines, Sabah, and all these maritime nations, they always procure their supplies via Fat Leonard. Fat Leonard's company is Leonard Defense System. Whenever they come over here, they procure millions and millions of dollars, US dollars, for their submarines, for their frigates, for their ships, for the battleships, and so forth and so on. Okay, what did Fat Leonard provide this naval staff of the United States 7th Fleet? He provided them expensive laptops, expensive tablets. If they are in the Philippines, he provided them young Filipino boys, pedophiles. These Americans, many of them are also pedophiles, prey on underage boys. He provided them with prostitutes. He provided them with very, very luxurious lunch, dinner, and food, other kinds of food. And he gave them all they need to make them happy, to make them jovial, to make them celebrate. So they are always very keen to do business, that is reciprocity with Fat Leonard. What happened after this? Fat Leonard became greedy, as mentioned by Susan Rose Ackerman, greed, culture, and the state. Fat Leonard made millions of dollars through his company based in Singapore. Leonard Naval Defense, some sort like that, the company's name. He even bribed, corruptly solicited the services and the know-how, the knowledge of the NCIS, Naval Criminal Investigation Services. They were also under Fat Leonard's payroll. So whatever case, criminal case against Fat Leonard is squashed by the Naval Criminal Investigation Service. Fat Leonard was already a millionaire in American dollars. But sooner or later, the higher-ups of the naval services, US found out about this big-time scandal conducted by Fat Leonard. Okay, in this case, Fat Leonard actively procured and bribed the naval staff, whereas the naval staff are known as passive bribers, as though they are totally innocent. And Fat Leonard is the guilty one who solicited and advocated for them to come under his payroll. No doubt, he is partly guilty, and I tend to believe, I'm inclined to believe that the Americans are also guilty, and as such, at the end of the investigation by the high-ups of the Navy, they sacked a good number of naval staff, including the admirals and the captains, and the others had their services tainted with corruption. Okay, what happened after this? Fat Leonard became a greedy man. He wanted to be a billionaire. He didn't only want to be a millionaire. So, the naval staff who did plea bargaining or plea mitigation, if you wish, with the higher ups to set up Fat Leonard. They invited him in a make-believe show, charade, that he will be awarded more contracts, more tenders, more business if he was to come over to the US, San Diego, to sign formal official agreements with the US Navy. Fat Leonard did not know this was a trap. They wanted to ambush him in US soil. Okay? As to extradite him from Malaysia to US or from Singapore to US, it will be quite a Herculean task, uphill battle for the US. As soon as Fat Leonard landed in San Diego, he was placed under arrest and tried for corruption. He was tried for corruption and then found guilty, and now is rotting in the United States Naval Prison in San Diego, and was diagnosed with cancer a few years ago. And about his health condition, I would really don't know. He might be resting in peace or might be suffering due to cancer. And that is the true account, true experience, real life scenario of Fat Leonard. Greedy man indeed. As Susan Rose Ackerman always said, greed is the main cause. Okay? As Gandhi said, the world has enough resources for everybody's needs but not one man's greed. Okay? Okay. That's what greed is all about. In Malay, it's called tamak. Ketamakan adalah punca rasuah dan salah guna kuasa dan penyelewengan. Rasuah. Okay. In Malaysia, I will tell local cases later, but today, since it's an election special, I'll go to the next topic by Susan Rose Ackerman, culture. In this aspect, I wish to congratulate and salute PMX and his cabinet again, because they have recognized Malaysia as a multiracial, multicultural, multi-religious. In fact, they recognized it long ago that Malaysia is a cosmopolitan society. You live your life, you live your culture. As long as you don't touch on matters of religion, as long as you don't touch matters on race, as long as you don't touch on matters on royalty. Other than that, you live your life. As far as I am concerned, as far as my family is concerned, we won't want to go to reside in a state in the East Coast. I'm fond of wearing shorts. I'm fond of being in my shorts most of the time because it's comfortable. Malaysia being a equatorial country, very hot, so I prefer to be on my shorts. I might be fine, and I don't want that. It's my life anyway. And my wife, she's a Chinese. She also likes to be in shorts, but she can't do that in the East Coast state concerned, or she might be fine. And as a human being, as a man, I got my weaknesses. I love to go to these girly barbers, and then if I'm at the wrong time, wrong place, I might be arrested to give evidence against the female hairdresser. What kind of life am I going to live? What kind of life am I leaving behind for my children, for my grandchildren, for my great-grandchildren? Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. PMX is doing his best, and I really sympathize, I support him, as he has a big hurdle, big obstacle of settling the 1.5 trillion ringgit incurred by the previous governments who practiced corruption, who practiced cronyism, who practiced nepotism. He is doing his level best, he is determined, he is committed to go against this scourge in Malaysian society. And as such, although I'm not affiliated to any party and I'm apolitical, that is, I'm non-aligned to any political parties, but I do this sincerely. I do this honestly, transparently, in the fight against corruption, which is an uphill battle. And I believe, I'm happy to say that PMX has already won the battle. But the war against corruption is far from over. We still got another 4 years to bring down the level of corruption, minimize it and reduce it. And I'm looking forward to his endeavors, his ventures, and I wish him all the best. Okay, culture again. Ladies and gentlemen, Another scholar has said that you must be the change you want to see in Malaysia. Let's say you don't want corruption, you must fight corruption, like it or not. You don't like abuse of power, misuse of power, you must fight against abuse of power, misuse of power. You don't like malfeasance, misfeasance, you again must fight against it. You must have the intention to fight it, at least. Or the best, you go in the war against corruption, which is a Herculean task. It's not easy, ladies and gentlemen. But I believe PMX and his cabinet have taken the right move to go against all these corrupted bastards, all these corrupted people, especially politicians. And I will come to my next topic on corruption in Malaysia involving the earliest Panama Papers. Okay, Panama, by the name of a lawyer, corporate lawyer by the name of Mossack Fonseca, who has dealt with many Malaysian businessmen and more so many Malaysian politicians, billionaires and so forth in Malaysia, who have already hid their money through Mossack Fonseca, a corporate lawyer in Panama. Second one is known as Paradise Papers. The third phenomena of corruption, the Pandora Papers. Okay, this has all been uncovered by a group of international consortium investigative journalists. Malaysia is in the limelight for the wrong reasons. Many Malaysian businessmen as well as politicians are involved in these three phases of corruption. Not only Malaysia, Hong Kong, Jackie Chan, the famous actor, he is also involved, as well as Amitabh Bachchan. He is also allegedly involved, all these two figures and many others. So, this is what happens. Why is Malaysians, although a rich, affluent country with resources such as LPG, petroleum, timber, palm oil, minerals and so forth and so on, but most of us are still suffering, especially those in the East Coast states of Kelantan, East Malaysia, Terengganu, not Terengganu, Kelantan, Sabah and Sarawak. Why are they suffering? The kids walk to school barefooted for miles. Is it fair? As I was working in Sabah for 12 years and Sarawak 7 years, I feel very sorry, pitiful for them. Very pathetic situation they are living in. Okay? And finally, Susan Rose Ackerman talks about the state. What does this mean? I totally agree with her. She says, if the government is good, stick on to the government, don't change. Don't gamble the lives of your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. This government, I'm sure it has its weaknesses, its flaws, but never ever gamble away the future of your children. as witnessed by the former government, which is corrupt to the very end. Corrupt, not only corrupt, they are kleptocrats. They practice cronyism, they practice nepotism. But PMX is against all this unhealthy, unscrupulous, dishonest, unethical behavior. Whereas, of course, the Walawons and the Selwangs who practice a feudal kind of life, kissing the hands of corrupted people, exchanging all the evil deeds, bad deeds, for a small sum of money, nothing much. Okay? And again, lastly, I'd like to talk about Edward Spence, Professor Edward Spence from the what do you call it? Australian National University. He promotes anti-corruption by movies from Hollywood. And I believe in this movie, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Who is the good? PMX and the cabinet, his cabinet is definitely the good. They acknowledge Malaysia being a cosmopolitan country, and they have brought in foreign direct investments on a very large, grand scale indeed. They are doing their job. Leave them do their job for the next 4 years. Let's see the improvement, the development, the growth in Malaysia under PMX and his able cabinet. In other words, PMX is the good. Then comes the bad. The bad are these useless characters, these morons, these idiots who have brought Malaysia to this situation now, who practice corruption shamelessly, who practice nepotism shamelessly, who are not embarrassed to practice nepotism, cronyism, which has brought Malaysia to a bad situation. They I consider as the bad. Who are the ugly? The ugly are the bunch of people who pretend to be good, who pretend to be noble, who pretend to be God-fearing. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a God-fearing man and a man of science. But the ugly, they are all hypocrites. They do not practice what they preach. Okay? Those are the ugly. I leave you guys, Malaysians, who I feel are learned enough to give consideration to what I have to say. Okay? Lastly, that's the article, ladies and gentlemen. Don't gamble, don't gamble. This is a good government. This is a benevolent government. It's Malaysia Madani with their reforms as advocated by Johnston for the civil society of any country. They have to do it. Okay? Lastly, before I sign off, as usual, I'll sing you the song, don't do the crime, if you can, do the time. Yeah, don't do it. Okay? If you do the crime, be prepared to spend the time behind bars. If you do the crime, be prepared to be investigated. If you do the crime, behind to be convicted, prosecuted, and spend a good number of your life behind bars. With that, I sign off, and lastly, all the best to PMX and his cabinet to carry out their goals in making Malaysia a better society, including eradicating absolute poverty, which I feel is very unbecoming for a society such as Malaysia with 32 million citizens. I wish him the best, PMX, and I believe again, I tend to believe, I'm inclined to believe that he will succeed with his able cabinet, provided we support him, we sympathize him, we give him all the encouragement, all the help, all the aid to bring up standard of living to Malaysia. Good night and have a great evening. Thank you very much.